Let's take a look at some information and charts on Zcash for BraveNewCoin. Zcash is known as a privacy coin. It has optional privacy, not default privacy, and there are some issues with that. The regulators largely disapprove of privacy of any kind, which is why Monero is not really listed anywhere because it does privacy better than anybody else. The privacy optionality of Zcash is shut off on the exchange side of things most of the time. You cannot send, for instance, shielded private stuff the way it's meant to be sent. I don't know if exchanges, this may have changed since I've last checked, but I doubt it. This is how the shielding works. So public addresses are like any other blockchain. And then you can have this mixture of shielded and unshielded. But ultimately, the transactions are not private until both are using Z addresses here. And we'll look at some of the numbers on how many transactions use that. But ultimately, you want the biggest pool. You want the biggest washing machine possible, right? You don't want anyone on the outside like CipherTrace or Chainalysis or whoever to come in and capture the chain and just make the privacy defunct, right? If people can figure it out because the pools are small or because the tech is bad or because most of the transactions are unshielded essentially or non-private, right? Like what's the point? There's just, it doesn't matter. It's not privacy at that point. I always like to check the transparency reports for the companies who are on top of the development for the coins. ECC is that such company. And we can see here they generally have plenty of money. Most of these projects usually have plenty of money. It's not like they're going to run out of money anytime soon. Probably Litecoin is probably the most at risk for hemorrhaging funds quickly. But at the end of Q4 and Q1, they held around 25 million USD in total. So they'll be fine for quite some time. And as price appreciates or they continue to get block reward payments, they will continue to have funds. So they have a long runway ahead of them. No worries there. But again, I can't talk about Zcash and privacy without talking about what the surveillance companies are doing. So this was all the way back in 2020, where Chainalysis, I don't know how to say that, this company, they said, yeah, we can investigate Dash and Zcash, no problem. So at that point, it's like, all right, well, if I'm going to use a privacy coin, it's not going to be these because people are watching me. So is Elliptic. They added a monitoring in 2020. CipherTrace has tried to crack Monero. Thus far, I don't believe they've been successful. And the Zcash people know that this is an issue. They've known it's an issue since 2018 because they talked about going to privacy by default. It doesn't mean they won't do that in the future or can't, but this isn't like a secret, right? So just keep in mind that if you're using Zcash for privacy, you're probably being monitored. Which, as long as people know, I could care less. It's just being informed and misinformed drives me nuts because if people view stuff like this as true privacy, and it isn't, that's where I get angry. Hash rate and difficulty for Zcash, because it is a proof of work coin, has continued to increase slowly. I don't really know where this hash rate's coming from because if we look at the ASICs, there aren't any new ASICs coming, at least that are public anyway, for the Zcash algorithm. So this hash rate bump has to be from GPUs or CPUs or some covert ASIC that nobody knows about yet. Profitability is still pretty good at 4 cents per kilowatt hour, which is what most miners get. If we look at the entire list here, the best profitability is definitely ETH, script coins, because Doge is still minting like mad for miners on top of LTC. I forget what this one is. This one is Dash, maybe? I forget all these. I forget what these are. But most of them are SHA-256 ETH script coins. Miners are making a ton of money right now, especially on BTC and ETH, because of the price appreciation of the token itself, the coin, rather. For on-chain stats for Zeke, transaction counts actually look super bullish for the first time in a long time. But there's a problem here, because if I can see the transactions, that means they're not private. Coin metrics does not include or cannot include those private shielded transactions. There are ways to look for those and include them in the data. I don't have that data accessible, but I'm assuming they haven't changed their methodology. So this is bullish for the token, yes. Does it mean less people or more people are using privacy or not using privacy? Well, these are not private because I can see them, so that there's that. Average transaction values also are rising flat. Doesn't really matter too much I just like to look at it to see what's going on. But again, private transactions are not included in this data. Zcash ECC rather does release info on the shielded pools as well as the fully shielded transactions per quarter. And you can see the shielded pools, the newer version, the sapling, has continued to increase. So in a perfect world, you see more and more growth in the shielded pools. It becomes more difficult to trace stuff like that, certainly not impossible. And that's just a fundamental, I'm going to use the word flaw in Zcash privacy, but a fundamental way Zcash works. You can monitor it relatively easily based on my understanding. And if you look at the fully shielded transactions, which are the only true private transactions, it's a very, very small percentage of the total transactions for any given quarter. So what you'd want, ideally, is this to be flipped. You'd want to see fully shielded transactions being a majority of the chain to truly think of this as a privacy coin. So again, for me, it's just a bit of a misnomer. I don't wake up and think, man, I can't wait to hate on some altcoin today, but I just want to make sure people are informed of what's going on. NVT had been declining for several years, really. NVT is a measure of economic activity relative to market cap. You want to see this one declining. It's been rising slightly over the past few weeks, past few months, really. So this is telling you market cap is rising faster than on-chain activity. Again, this does not include the shielded transactions. So if there's a lot of on-chain activity that's shielded, fully shielded, it's not going to show up here. And NVT is going to be higher than it actually is. I don't really like NVT anyway, to be honest. So I wouldn't take that as a mega bearish metric, but seeing active addresses in the fill here decline, certainly not bullish. So it's weird to see transactions rising and active addresses declining. I don't really know what to think about that, but ultimately I think active addresses are more important than transactions. It depends on the network, but these have just continued to decline since April. So ideally they'll start to pick up pretty soon here. Grayscale does have a Zcash trust here, 35 million, one of the smaller-ish trusts, but you can follow that. It's accessible through legacy means. Should Zcash ever become the flavor of the week, FOMO type vehicle. Zcash on Google Trends past 5 years, basically just flat. As Zcash pops off on technicals, which it looks like it's going to, I'm actually bullish on Zcash on technicals, at least on the USD chart. Fundamentals and technicals don't need to always line up, and I certainly trust technicals over fundamentals, but as price starts to pick up, you're probably going to see a rise in Google Trends. What you don't want to see is Google Trends hitting all-time highs quickly, because that typically means everybody who's wanting to get in has gotten in, everybody knows about it. Here's a good example. If we look at Shiba over there, let's just past 90 days. I mean, this is, to me, a massive bear div warning sign. So October 29th, you'd have to look at the chart, but I'm pretty sure that correlates pretty well with the top. And it's funny how that works out on Google Trends like that. But it's an easy way to just check yourself. Yes, this thing's going to insanity. Yes, I'm euphoric. Everybody's getting rich, blah, blah, blah. Are Google Trends declining? Because that's ultimately probably going to line up with price pretty well. Flipping gears to technicals, this is the 1 year MA and the multiplier. Generally how this works is it's an oscillator. The buy zone is in the green area below the MA. The sell zone is above the red area. For most coins, this actually is a great indicator. You can see here for Zcash, from 2018 to 2020, really mid 2020, it was kind of in the buy zone that entire time. So you just have to be careful how this looks on backtesting if you want to actually use it. Most recently, it dipped into the buy zone twice, should you have wanted to buy the dip, let's say. Something else to note here is it's never reached the 5x multiple, the red line here. The midline represents the 2.5x multiple, I believe. And that's really where it's stalled out historically. So for me, the cycle top is probably somewhere around that midline, around 400. So yes, that's a decent move up from here. Anything above the midline is a gift, and I would take it and say thank you. I would not expect this thing to reach for the 5x multiple. But one way you could play this is sell anything above 400, 10% at 400, 10% at 420, 10% at 450, 10% at 520, right? Just set some asks all the way up to the 5x multiple, and you get what you get. And by the time the top is in, you'll know pretty well based on price, and then you can just get rid of the rest, right? That's one way to do it. but I definitely like that as a cycle target. On the cloud and on the 200-day moving average, things look better than they've looked in a long time. They look as good as they did in January, honestly, because we're above the 200, we're above the cloud, bullish TK cross, bullish cloud. We're starting to get into this volume resistance area here. If you measure this W, double bottom, using fibs, you get a target of 225 to 360, which is the next big volume resistance, dating back to like 2017. So it's hard to know how relevant that is. But the cloud is also telling you that 225 is a 50% retracement here. So on trend, this looks great on the USD pair. In a vacuum, looks great. On the BTC pair, it's a bit curious, let's say. Now, it has a super hyper aggro aggressive downtrend since 2018, since 2017, since this thing got listed, right? And it's gotten close once to finally breaking out of this, but it's still in the pitchfork, still below the cloud, still below the 200. Something to watch for, even into as late as January 2022, is a break above all of this stuff. The confluence is huge at this diagonal, whatever it is. You can see the 200 there at the cloud, the pitchfork. If this can get a bullish Kumo breakout, super ultra late cycle, I do like a move to 43,000 sats, whatever this is. This has the potential for a lot of stuff depending on what happens in Q1. You know, I'm not fundamentally bullish on Zcash over BTC, but it's just been bearish for so many years. And this is just another opportunity for it to actually do something. So this could morph into an inverted head and shoulders, shoulder head, shoulder to be formed yet. This could have a bullish Kumo breakout, bullish 200 breakout. This could make a macro W double bottom. This could do a lot of stuff to actually turn the needle. But it is a long ways away. It is months away from figuring that out. So I would just set alerts for this thing if you're trading this at around 290,000 sats, whatever the 200-day moving average is, and just forget about it because that's going to be the level. On the next level after that's the 43 or 430,000 sats. I don't even know how to say that. 0043, whatever. So breakout into W into maybe more, but that's doubtful. And against ETH, I did zoom way out on the 3-day just to get a signal on the trend, but it's kind of pretty obvious what's happened since 2017. It has never been above the 3-day cloud against ETH since inception. Not exactly a bullish sentiment there. This does have a growing bullish divergence. Again, would I trade this over ETH fundamentally? No. You couldn't pay me to take Zcash over ETH because I know I'd be losing money, but on technicals, this is a bull div. This is a multi-month bull div. It is pretty far down below the cloud, and more importantly, it's pretty far down below the 3-day moving 200 moving average, which it also has never touched before. So if this thing does miraculously get bullish late cycle, I like this 0.22 level against ETH. One of the problems with these privacy coins, even though Zcash really isn't a privacy coin, is that they have trouble getting listed and staying listed in Asia, in wherever else, because regulators just don't like the idea of people having privacy in their transactions. So I wouldn't buy this, but it doesn't look half bad on technicals, honestly. It's going to take a long time for this to play out. Again, January, maybe if Q1 is miraculously fine for crypto, which I don't think is going to be the case, then this BTC pair can do something, the ETH pair can do something. I wouldn't bet on it, but it's something to watch, definitely. Lastly, I'll just mention the ETH BTC fund and DeFi portfolio. I trade for Technique Capital and Enzyme.finance, a non-custodial portfolio management tool where you can send ETH or USDC or just watch what I'm doing. You can see everything, including AUM performance, allocation, all the vaults I'm in here on Yearn, Comp, and Aave, as well as the trades in the trades tab down below. That's all for this one. Like, dislike, comment, share, subscribe, and happy trading.